Hi, today I'm going to talk in more details about the formulation of a research problem. The formulation of a research problem is the first and the most important step of the research process. It's like the identification of a destination before undertaking a journey. It's like the foundation of a building. The type and the design of the building are dependent upon the foundation. So, as the research problem, where it serves as the foundation of a research study, if it is well formulated, you can expect a good study to follow. And as Kerlinger mentioned, if one wants to solve a problem, one must generally know what the problem is. The way you formulate a problem determines the almost every step that follows. Suppose you want to conduct a research study on the services available after the sale of a certain product. Your study will be mainly descriptive and qualitative in nature. However, on the other hand, if you want to find out the extent of use of these services, meaning the number of people using these services, it will mainly be quantitative methodologies. Or if your focus is on determining the extent of use in relationship to the personal attributes of the customers, then the study will be classified as correlational. Similarly, if your aim is to find out the effectiveness of these services, the study will again be classified as correlational. So the study design and the data collection methods and analysis will belong in this case to the quantitative methodology. So the way you formulate the problem will determine whether each of these steps will follow a qualitative or a quantitative approach. Initially, you may be confused, but this is normal. Remember that confusion is the first step towards clarity. So take time in formulating your problem because it will be easier for you later on to determine your objective and the research question. So this step is the most crucial step, determining the research problem. So if you are still haven't selected a research topic and don't know where to start, then this section will help you. Most research revolves around the 4 P's: people, problems, programs, and phenomena. In practice, most research studies are based upon a combination of at least 2 P's. You may select a group of individuals related to a certain community, people, to examine the existence of certain issues or problems related to their lives, or to ascertain their attitudes toward a certain issue or problem, to establish the existence of a regularity of occurrence, a phenomenon, or to evaluate the effectiveness of a certain program. For example, you can study the relationship between wages and motivation of labor. The study can be carried out on the basis of information collected from individuals, groups, communities, or organizations. And the emphasis in these studies will be to explore or discover or establish an association or a causation or the effects. Similarly, you can study different aspects of a program. You can study its effectiveness, its structure or the need for it, the consumer satisfaction with it, and so on. So in order to ascertain these, you collect information from people. So basically, there are two aspects of research problems. Every research study has two aspects. The first aspect is people who will provide you with the study population, while the problem, the program, or the phenomenon furnishes the subject area about which information is collected. You can study a problem, a program, or a phenomenon in any academic field or from any professional perspective. For example, you can measure the effectiveness of a program in the fields of health, education, industrial management, or any other field. You can also look at a problem from a business perspective. So you can take consumer opinions about any aspect of a program in any field. The two main aspects are described in this table. So you see people will provide the information, and then you can get information about a certain problem, program, or phenomenon. Okay, so you study the issues, attitudes, needs of people, or you can study the content of a certain program, the service provided, the outcome, its cost, certain causes and effects of a certain phenomena. So people will provide the information, and then you get the information that you need to collect to find answers to your research questions. When selecting a research problem or topic, there are a number of considerations to keep in mind, in which these will help you to ensure that your study will be manageable. The first consideration is the interest. Now, this should be the most important consideration in selecting a research problem. Because research is usually time consuming and involves hard work, and if you select a topic which does not greatly interest you, it could become extremely difficult to sustain the required motivation and put enough time and energy to complete it. So you must be interested in the topic that you will choose. The second consideration is magnitude. You should have sufficient knowledge about the research process to be able to visualize the work involved in completing the study. So you should narrow the topic down to something manageable, specific, and clear. Also, the relevance. You have to select a topic that is of relevance to you as a professional. Ensure that your study adds to the existing body of knowledge, bridge current gaps, or is useful in the formulation of a certain policy. This will help you to sustain interest in the study. Also, the availability of data. If your topic entails collection of information from some sources, like some already published reports. So you have to make sure that this data is available and in the format that you want before finalizing your topic. So as we mentioned, the formulation of a research problem is the most crucial part of the research journey. So it's very important to take your time and determine what would be the research problem that you're really interested in. In this section, I will talk about the process of formulating a research problem. We have a number of steps that will provide reasonable level of knowledge in the subject area in which you will undertake your study. So if you don't know what specific research topic or idea, questions or issue you want to research, which is not uncommon among students. So going through the following steps will help in deciding what you want to find out about. So it will help you select and narrow down a subject area that could become the basis of a research problem for your study. So the first step is to identify a subject of interest to you, and it's very important to do this at the very beginning. You have to ask yourself, what is it that really interests me? What is the field in which you like to work after graduation, for example? This will help you to find an interesting topic and one which may be useful to you in the future. The second step is to dissect the area into sub-areas. For example, the more you think or read about an area, the more sub-areas you will identify. So in preparing your list of sub-areas, you should also consult others who have some knowledge about the area, and you have to look into the literature review in this subject area. It will help you a lot. You can develop these sub-areas as you read in the literature review, and then you can proceed to the next stage where you select what you will become the basis of your search. Then you will select what is of most interest to you out of these sub-areas that you developed. So from the list that you have made, select the sub-areas about which you are passionate about. Your interest should be the most important thing when you are selecting. One way to decide what interests you most is to start with a process of elimination. So you can go through your list and delete all these sub-areas or questions or issues that you're not very interested about. So you need to continue doing this until you are left with one interesting area. So once you are confident that you have selected something that you're really passionate about and can manage, you can go to the next step, which is raising your research question. At this step, you ask yourself, what is it that I want to find out about in this sub area? You can also make a list of whatever questions that come to mind relating to your chosen sub-area. Now, the next step will be formulating the objectives. Both your main objectives and your sub-objectives now need to be formulated based on your research question. You need to understand that the main difference between objectives and research question is the way in which they are written. Research questions are obviously questions, but objectives transform these questions into aims by using action verbs or phrases such as you need to find out, determine, examine. Okay? Now, some researchers prefer to reverse the process. So they start from the objectives and formulate research questions. You can do whatever you feel easier for you. And then you double check and go through all these steps to make sure that you're okay with these objectives that you proposed and you're really passionate about the research topic and the problem that you have chosen. So, as we mentioned, objectives are the goals you set to attain in your study. Since these objectives inform the reader of what you want to achieve in the study, so it is extremely important to word them clearly and specifically. It's very important to distinguish between the main objective and sub-objectives. And when writing the main objectives, it's very important to use phrases like these: to determine, to find out, to measure, to explore. And the objectives should be clear, complete, specific as much as possible, because the way the main objectives and the sub-objectives are worded determines how your research is classified, whether it's descriptive, correlational, experimental. So, in other words, the wording of your objective determines the type of research design you need to adopt to achieve these objectives. So, be very careful about the way you word and you write down your objective. Now, you need to know that if you're having a correlational study, so in addition to having these three main characteristics of any objective, the wording of the main objective should also include the main variables to be correlated. For example, if you are comparing the effectiveness of different teaching methods on the comprehension of students, here this is a correlational study, and so you need to identify the main variables that will be correlated. Also, if your main purpose of the study is to test a certain hypothesis, the wording of the main objective should also indicate the direction of the relationship being tested. Example, to ascertain if an increase in youth unemployment will increase the incidence or crime at streets. So it's very important to identify the direction of the relationship if you're setting a certain hypothesis. So mainly these are the characteristics of the objectives and sub-objectives that you should determine in your study. Here is an example, showing the steps followed when conducting a study in the area of health. So the first step was identifying the subject of interest. Here it is health. Of course, you have to elaborate more about the subject. Then dissect the area into sub-areas. So you can determine the health services provided to community, or effectiveness of the service, the cost of the service, attitudes of consumers toward the service, community responsiveness in the delivery of the service. So this is the list of the sub areas that you are interested in. And now you have to think about what is the most one that interests you from this list. Maybe you will choose community responsiveness in the delivery of this service. The next step will be raising your research question. It might be how can community responsiveness be achieved, or what indicators can be used to evaluate the effectiveness of community responsiveness strategies. So you can write the list of the research questions here and then decide which one you want to adopt. Then it's time to formulate the objective. The main objective might be evaluate the effectiveness of community responsiveness strategies in the delivery of health services. Some of the sub-objectives might include identifying the strategies to implement the concept of community responsiveness in health services, to develop a set of indicators to evaluate the effectiveness of the strategies used in implementation of community responsiveness. And the last step will be to double check and go through these steps again to really tell if you're interested in this study, you totally agree with the objectives, and you have all the adequate resources to go and carry on with your study. Thank you for listening.